If tomatoes barely produce on your patio, do not give up on the space. The problem may not be your gardening skills. You may simply be growing crops that need more sunlight than your patio can provide. A tomato can stay green, stretch toward the brightest corner, and occupy a large container for months, yet still give you only a handful of fruit. Meanwhile, one wide pot of leafy greens can provide something useful for the kitchen again and again. That is the shift we are making today. Instead of fighting a cloudy patio or shorter days, we are choosing 15 crops that are better matched to the light that is actually available. By the end of this video, you will know which crops deserve the brightest positions, which ones can manage in softer light, how to water when the patio stays cooler, and how to harvest without weakening the plants. You will also see why shade tolerant does not mean no light required. These crops still need a bright environment. They simply ask for less direct sun than tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and squash usually need to produce well. Before choosing the first crop, take one full day to study your patio. Look at it in the morning, around midday, and again in the late afternoon. Notice where direct sunlight lands, how long it stays, and what blocks it. A railing may shade the lower half of a container, even when the upper leaves are bright. A wall may receive reflected light for hours without ever receiving direct sun. A tall plant may cast a moving shadow over smaller pots, and as the season changes, the sun travels lower across the sky. So, an area that felt bright in midsummer may become noticeably dimmer when the days shorten. It helps to separate 4 different conditions. Direct sun means the sun's rays fall directly on the leaves. Partial sun means a location gets some direct sunlight, but not for most of the day. Bright shade means the patio is still visibly bright and open to the sky, even though the leaves may receive little direct sun. Deep shade is different. It is dark, enclosed, and blocked from several directions. Most edible crops will struggle to give useful harvests in true deep shade. So when we talk about lower light in this video, we are mainly talking about bright shade, filtered light, or a few hours of direct sun. There is one more simple test that can save you weeks of disappointment. Stand where the leaves will actually grow, not just where the pot sits. A container on the floor may look bright, while the plant remains behind a solid railing. If direct sun touches only the upper leaves, raise the container or choose a crop harvested young. If the entire plant remains in dull light all day, use that position only after the brighter zones are full. That distinction matters, because a plant can survive in a place where it will never become productive. Long, weak stems, pale leaves, slow regrowth, and a strong lean toward one direction are all signs that the plant is reaching for more light. When you see those signs, fertilizer will not solve the problem. More water will not solve it either. The plant needs a brighter position, less crowding, or a crop better suited to the space. The phrase "plant these now" also depends on where you live. The United States includes many climates, and the same calendar date can mean mild growing weather in one region and freezing conditions in another. Use your local temperatures, first frost date, and seasonal pattern to decide whether to sow outdoors, start seeds under cover, or save a crop for your next cool season window. The plants in this list generally perform best when conditions are cool to mild, but your local weather should always guide the timing. Once you understand the light, protect the best part of the patio. Do not let the brightest corner be occupied by a plant that is barely producing simply because it is still alive. Reserve that area for crops that can turn the available light into leaves, stems, or roots you will actually use. Lift low containers onto a sturdy shelf if a railing blocks them. Keep taller crops behind shorter ones, but make sure they do not create a new wall of shade. Rotate a pot by about a quarter turn when the plant leans strongly toward the light. This will not create more sunlight, but it can help the plant grow more evenly. Wide containers are often especially useful for leafy crops. They give you more growing surface, better spacing, and easier access for harvesting. Every container still needs drainage holes. Lower light usually means slower drying. Not that drainage becomes less important. In fact, wet roots can become an even bigger problem when evaporation slows down. Light-colored pots can help keep roots cooler during hot weather, but the color of the pot does not replace light on the leaves. A bright wall or a clean, pale surface may reflect some useful light, but think of reflected light as support, not a substitute for the sky. The potting mix should also match the slower rhythm of a low-sun patio. Heavy garden soil can stay waterlogged in a container when cool weather reduces evaporation. Use a loose mix that drains freely while still holding enough moisture for roots. Before planting, water the empty mix and make sure every drainage hole works. Raise the pot slightly if the floor blocks the holes. With the patio mapped and the brightest spaces protected, we can begin with the crop that gives many beginners the fastest confidence: leaf lettuce. Leaf lettuce earns its place because you harvest the part of the plant that handles lower light best. The plant does not need to build a large fruit, ripen seeds inside that fruit, or support a heavy vine. It only needs to produce leaves. Loose leaf varieties are especially practical in containers because you do not have to wait for a tight head to form. You can begin harvesting the outside leaves while the center continues to grow. A wide container is usually more useful than a deep, narrow pot for lettuce. The roots still need healthy soil and good drainage, but lettuce does not require the same depth as a mature tomato or kale plant. What it needs most is enough space between plants for light and air to reach the leaves. A pot packed with seedlings may look impressive for the first week, but crowded plants compete for light, stay wet around the base, and produce smaller leaves. When you harvest, remove the oldest outer leaves first. Hold the leaf near the base and cut or pinch it cleanly without damaging the center. The small leaves in the middle are the growing point. If you cut straight across the entire plant too low, you may remove that point and lose the regrowth you were hoping for. A better approach is to take a few outer leaves from several plants. That gives you a small harvest while leaving enough leaf area for each plant to continue making energy. In lower light, regrowth may be slower than it would be in full sun. That is normal. Judge the crop by whether it is giving you tender, healthy leaves over time, not by whether it grows at summer speed. If the stems become very long, the leaves feel thin, or the plants lean hard toward one side, move the container closer to the brighter zone. You can also reduce crowding by removing the weakest seedlings. For the most reliable supply, think in small waves instead of one large planting. Sow a short row, wait until those seedlings are established, then sow another row. The first group will be ready to harvest, while the second group is still growing. This also protects you from losing the whole crop to one hot spell, one pest problem, or one watering mistake. If every seed is planted on the same day, every plant reaches the same vulnerable stage at the same time. During germination, keep the surface evenly moist because tiny seeds and shallow roots dry quickly. Once the plants are established, water less often but more thoroughly. A light sprinkle that only wets the surface encourages roots to stay near the top. A careful, deeper watering followed by proper drainage encourages the roots to explore more of the container. Lettuce becomes valuable through frequency. A few leaves can go into a sandwich, wrap, burger, or small salad. You do not need a giant harvest on one day. You need a crop that can give you something useful several times. And if you sow a small amount every couple of weeks during suitable weather, you can avoid having every plant mature at once. Lettuce is forgiving, but the next crop becomes especially valuable when the patio is both cooler and less sunny. Spinach is known as a cool season green, yet many beginners lose it not because of low light, but because the container stays too wet. Spinach can remain productive with less direct sun than fruiting crops, especially when temperatures are cool. But cool weather and shade are not the same thing. A bright, cool patio can be excellent. A dark, wet corner is not. Spinach roots need oxygen, so use a mix that drains well, while still holding enough moisture to prevent the seedlings from drying out. Check the soil before watering. Press a finger into the top layer instead of watering automatically because it is a certain day of the week. If the surface is dry, but the mix below still feels damp, wait. If the container feels unusually heavy, that is another sign that it may still be holding water. As the days shorten, a pot that needed water every day in summer may need it far less often. Spinach can be harvested in two useful ways. For baby leaves, pick them while they are small and tender. For larger plants, remove the outer leaves and leave the center intact. You can also harvest an entire young plant if you intentionally sowed a row for thinning. The key is to decide the harvest style before the pot becomes overcrowded. When spinach grows slowly, avoid the temptation to solve everything with fertilizer. Too much nitrogen in a low light, wet container can produce soft growth without fixing the real limitation. Keep the soil evenly fertile, but let light, temperature, spacing, and moisture do their jobs. Healthy spinach should have sturdy leaves, not long, weak stems reaching toward the sky. Spinach also benefits from protection against sudden temperature swings. A patio may be cool most of the day, but becomes surprisingly warm when sunlight reflects from glass or a pale wall. If the leaves wilt only during that brief warm period and recover later, check the soil before adding water. The plant may be responding to heat, not dryness. Moving the container a short distance can be more helpful than soaking the roots. If seedlings emerge too closely, use the thinnings in the kitchen instead of leaving every plant to compete. Removing weak seedlings feels wasteful, but crowded spinach often gives you many tiny leaves instead of a smaller number of useful ones. Good spacing is one of the easiest ways to increase the value of limited light. In the kitchen, spinach is one of the most flexible crops on this list. Young leaves can go into salads and smoothies. Larger leaves can be added to eggs, soups, pasta, or a quick sauté. Even a modest container becomes worthwhile when the harvest fits into meals you already cook. Spinach rewards patience. The next crop takes the opposite approach. Arugula grows quickly, and its flavor can change just as quickly if you wait too long to harvest. Arugula is a strong choice for a bright patio with limited direct sun because it is often grown for young leaves. A shallow but well-drained container can work well, especially if it is wide enough to sow a short row. The mistake is scattering too many seeds in one spot and leaving every seedling in place. Thin the row so the remaining plants receive light and airflow. Harvest timing changes the experience of this crop. Young arugula leaves are usually milder and more tender. Older leaves develop a stronger peppery flavor, and warm conditions can make that flavor even sharper. If you want a gentle leaf for sandwiches and salads, begin harvesting early. If you enjoy a more intense taste, allow some leaves to grow larger. Arugula can be treated as a cut-and-come-again crop, but you need to cut above the growing point. Take the outer leaves or trim a portion of the plant while leaving the center. The next flush may arrive more slowly when the days are short, so do not keep cutting a weak plant faster than it can recover. This is also a useful crop for succession sowing. Rather than filling one large container with a single sowing, plant a small section, then another small section later. That spreads the harvest and gives you younger leaves over a longer period. If one group becomes too strong in flavor or begins to flower, another group is already coming behind it. Arugula adds life to simple meals. Place it on pizza after baking, mix it into pasta, layer it in a sandwich, or combine it with lettuce to make a salad more interesting. The first three crops are tender salad greens. Now we move to plants that need more container space, but can provide heavier leaves for soups, sautés, and warm meals. Kale is often described as tough, and in cool weather, it can be remarkably resilient. But resilience does not mean it belongs in the darkest corner. Kale still needs a bright position if you want strong stems and substantial leaves. On a low-sun patio, give it one of the better locations, especially if you plan to keep the plant for a long time. Use a container large enough for the roots to develop without competing with several other full-size kale plants. One healthy plant in a suitable pot can be more productive than 4 crowded plants fighting for light and water. If you want baby kale, dense sowing is possible for a short harvest cycle. But if you want a mature plant that produces for weeks, provide more space. Harvest the lower leaves first. These are the oldest leaves, and removing them allows the plant to keep its central growing point. Never cut out the top unless you intend to end the plant's main growth. Take 1 or 2 leaves at a time from a smaller plant and avoid stripping it bare. The remaining leaves are the plant's solar panels. Without them, regrowth slows. Watch the shape of the stem. If the spaces between leaves become long and the whole plant leans, the light is probably too weak. Move it closer to the brightest area, or remove a taller object that is shading it. Rotating the container can help with balance, but it cannot compensate for a truly dark location. Also, remove yellow leaves that touch the soil. They no longer contribute much energy and can trap moisture around the base. Water near the soil rather than soaking the whole plant late in the day. In cool, low-light conditions, wet foliage may stay wet for a long time. Kale may also attract aphids or caterpillars, even on an upper-floor patio. Inspect the underside of the leaves and the newest growth. A weak plant in poor light can be more difficult to manage because it replaces damaged leaves slowly. Early inspection lets you remove a small problem before it spreads through the plant. Wash edible leaves carefully and use a control method appropriate for food crops if intervention is needed. If the plant remains healthy but growth slows in winter, do not keep stripping leaves at the same summer pace. Match the harvest to the rate of new growth. During active periods, the plant may replace leaves quickly. During short, cold days, it may need more time between harvests. The most productive gardener is not the person who takes the most leaves today. It is the person who keeps the plant capable of producing tomorrow. Kale can serve several kinds of meals. Young leaves can be used raw. Larger leaves can go into soup, pasta, or a quick sauté. Some people bake them into chips. The important point is not that one container replaces every bunch of kale from the store. It is that the same plant can give you repeated, useful harvests when it is managed well. Kale gives us sturdy leaves. The next plant adds colorful stems and follows a different harvesting rhythm. Swiss chard needs room, but one well-grown plant can remain useful for a long time. Swiss chard is often chosen for its appearance because the stems can be white, yellow, orange, pink, or red. But it is not only decorative. The leaves and stems are both edible, and that makes the crop especially valuable in a small space garden. Compared with lettuce, chard benefits from a deeper and wider container. The root system supports large leaves, and the plant can remain in place for an extended period. Give it a bright position, though it can often manage with less direct sun than many fruiting plants. If the light becomes too weak, the leaf stems may stretch, and the plant can become open and floppy. Harvest the outside stalks close to the base. Leave the young center leaves alone so they can continue expanding. Do not remove every large leaf at once, especially from a small plant. A gradual harvest keeps enough leaf area for recovery. If a stalk is damaged or lies on wet soil, remove it cleanly rather than allowing it to decay around the crown. Keep the soil evenly moist but not waterlogged. A larger chard plant can use more water than lettuce, yet a cloudy patio still dries slowly. Check the soil instead of assuming the plant is thirsty because the leaves are large. Temporary drooping in warm afternoon conditions is different from constantly wet soil and damaged roots. In the kitchen, the leaves can be used much like spinach, while the thicker stems may need extra cooking time. Add them to soups, sautés, grain bowls, or pasta. One plant can provide both color and substance, which is useful when every container must earn its place. Kale and chard are larger plants. The next group gives us compact shapes, faster harvests, and more variety in a limited patio. We begin with bok choy. Bok choy can be grown for a full head, but compact and baby varieties are often better suited to containers. The closer the plants are spaced, the smaller they will remain. If you want larger heads, thin them and give each plant room to form a sturdy base. If you prefer baby bok choy, you can harvest earlier and use the space for another sowing. Place bok choy in one of the brighter zones. It may tolerate less direct sun than a pepper, but it still needs enough light to build thick leaf stalks and a compact shape. In very low light, the plant may stretch upward rather than forming the dense rosette you want. You can harvest the whole plant at the base, or take a few outer leaves while allowing the center to continue. Whole head harvesting gives you a clear, satisfying result. Outer leaf harvesting can extend the crop, but do not remove so much that the plant loses its ability to recover. Check the leaves regularly for chewing damage. Tender brassica leaves attract several pests, and damage is easier to manage when you notice it early. Good spacing also helps you inspect the center of the plant and improves airflow. In cool weather, avoid keeping the soil constantly
right at the
soaked.
base here.
Bok choy is also
Look at
a
this
good
beautiful
crop for learning the
harvest,
difference
perfectly
between
fresh for
appearance and
dinner
real
tonight.
growth. A plant may have several green leaves but still lack the thick base that makes a satisfying harvest. Look into the center. New leaves should be forming closely, and the stalks should feel firm. If the plant is open, tall, and loose, it may need more light or more space. Because bok choy can mature relatively quickly in suitable conditions, it fits well into a rotation. After harvesting the whole plant, refresh the surface of the mix with a modest amount of compost or suitable fertilizer, check the drainage, and replant. Rotating fast crops through one wide container can be more efficient than dedicating every pot to a plant that remains for months. Bok choy works in stir-fries, noodles, soups, and steamed dishes. The leaves cook quickly, while the pale stalks stay crisp longer. It brings a different texture from lettuce and spinach, which makes the patio harvest feel more varied. Bok choy grows upright. The next crop stays much lower, forming a compact rosette that fits surprisingly well on a shelf. Tatsoi is less familiar to some gardeners, but its shape makes it ideal for small spaces. Tatsoi produces dark green, spoon-shaped leaves that spread outward close to the soil. Because it stays low, it can fit beneath a higher shelf as long as the shelf does not block too much light. It still needs a bright location. Low growing does not mean darkness loving. You can harvest tatsoi as baby leaves for salads, or allow the plant to form a wider rosette for cooking. When harvesting individual leaves, take the outer ones and keep the center. If the leaves rest directly on wet soil, improve spacing or add a light mulch that keeps them cleaner without trapping excess moisture around the crown. Airflow is important. A dense rosette can hold water, especially when rain or overhead watering reaches the center. Water near the soil and inspect the plant after long, cloudy periods. Tatsoi is compact, but the leaves should still feel firm and healthy, not soft from constant wetness. Its mild flavor works in salads, soups, and stir-fries. It also mixes well with stronger greens. Tatsoi stays compact. Mizuna moves in the opposite direction, producing a looser mass of narrow, deeply cut leaves. Mizuna brings texture to a container garden. Its serrated leaves create a full appearance without requiring the heavy structure of a large kale plant. It can be harvested young for salad mixes or allowed to grow larger for cooking. The biggest early task is thinning. When seedlings are crowded, they shade one another, remain damp at the base, and produce weak stems. Remove the smallest plants so the stronger ones can spread. A wide container is ideal because it lets you create a short band of plants rather than one congested clump. For a cut and come again harvest, take some of the outer leaves or cut a section above the center. Avoid cutting too close to the soil. The plant may produce another flush, but the speed depends on temperature and total light. During very short days, a light harvest is better than repeatedly cutting a plant that has stopped growing. Mizuna can attract slugs or leaf-chewing insects depending on the patio environment. Check the underside of leaves and the area beneath the pot. Keeping the container raised slightly can improve drainage and make inspection easier. In the kitchen, Mizuna works in salads, noodles, stir-fries, and soups. Its shape and mild bite add variety. Mizuna brings texture. The next crop brings the strongest flavor in this group, but harvesting it young changes everything. Mustard greens include many varieties, from broad green leaves to deeply curled or purple types. Their flavor can range from gently spicy to quite strong. Leaf age and temperature both affect that flavor. Young leaves are usually milder, while older leaves often become more intense. Decide how you want to use the crop before choosing the spacing. For baby leaves, you can sow more closely and harvest early. For larger cooking leaves, thin the plants and give them room. On a patio with limited sun, place mustard greens in a brighter zone. Strong growth helps the plants produce fuller leaves rather than long, thin stems. Harvest outer leaves as they reach a useful size, or cut young plants for a baby leaf mix. If you dislike a powerful mustard flavor, do not wait until every leaf is large and mature. Harvesting earlier gives you a gentler crop and frees space for another sowing. Like other brassica greens, mustard can attract leaf-chewing pests. Inspect the leaves rather than assuming every hole is caused by low light or poor nutrition. A plant can be in the right position and still need pest management. Mustard greens can be sautéed, added to soup, mixed with milder greens, or used young in salads. When you grow several of these Asian greens together, label the rows. Young tatsoi, mizuna, and mustard seedlings can look similar to a beginner, but they mature with different shapes and flavors. A simple label helps you compare them honestly. You may discover that one performs much better in your exact patio conditions. That information is more valuable than trying to force every crop to succeed equally. Keep notes on sowing date, first harvest, and the position of the container. You do not need a complicated garden journal. 3 short details are enough to reveal patterns. If mizuna repeatedly performs well in the medium light zone, while mustard stretches, you know where to invest your limited space next season. At this point, choosing the right crop is only half the solution. The way you water a low-sun patio can either protect all 9 of these crops or quietly weaken them. When sunlight decreases, watering usually needs to decrease too. Leaves lose water more slowly. Soil evaporates less moisture. Roots use water at a slower rate because the plant is growing more slowly. A container that dried in one day during summer may stay damp for several days during a cloudy period. Water according to the container, not according to the calendar. Check the soil below the surface. If possible, lift smaller pots and learn how heavy they feel when wet and when nearly dry. Water thoroughly when the plant needs it, then allow excess water to drain. Do not leave containers standing in full saucers for long periods unless the crop specifically requires that condition. Try to water near the soil. Wet leaves that remain damp overnight can create problems, especially when airflow is poor. Remove dead foliage, space pots so air can move, and avoid placing every container tightly against a wall. A little room around the plants can make a major difference. A moisture meter can be useful, but it is not required. Your finger, the weight of the pot, the color of the mix, and the behavior of the leaves can tell you a great deal. Learn the normal appearance of each crop. Lettuce may soften slightly when dry, while a chard plant may droop dramatically. But drooping alone does not prove that the roots need water. Roots damaged by constant wetness can also leave a plant unable to take up moisture. If you are uncertain, check more than one place in a wide container. The edge may be dry while the center is still wet. Water slowly enough for the mix to absorb it, and stop when excess begins to drain. Empty standing water from sources after the pot has finished draining. This simple habit protects roots during cloudy stretches. This watering adjustment becomes especially important for the next crop because wet soil and weak light can leave you with plenty of leaves but almost nothing to harvest below them. That crop is the radish. Radishes are often called easy because they germinate quickly and can mature faster than many vegetables. But on a low-sun patio, they reveal one of the most common misunderstandings in gardening. A radish plant with large leaves is not necessarily a successful radish crop. The real proof is the root. Choose round or small-rooted varieties for containers unless you have enough depth for a longer type. Fill the pot with a loose, well-drained mix. Stones, compacted soil, and hard layers can interfere with root development. Sow the seeds with enough space and thin them early. 2 seedlings pressed together cannot both form good roots. Give radishes one of the brightest available locations. They need less energy than a tomato vine, but forming a swollen root still requires more light than simply making a few leaves. If the patio has a small area of direct morning sun, radishes may deserve part of it. Avoid excessive nitrogen. Too much nitrogen can encourage leafy growth at the expense of the root. Use a balanced approach to fertility, and do not keep feeding simply because the leaves look impressive. Also, watch the temperature. Radishes perform best during suitable cool conditions, and heat can affect root quality. The shoulder of a developing radish may begin to show near the soil surface. That is a useful sign. Gently brush away a little soil if necessary, but do not disturb every plant. Harvest when the root reaches the expected size for the variety. Waiting too long can produce a woody or pithy texture. If you pull a plant and find only a thin root, ask 4 questions. Was the light too weak? Were the plants too crowded? Was nitrogen too high? Was the temperature outside the crop's preferred range? The answer may be a combination. Radishes are also useful for succession planting because they do not need to occupy the container for an entire season. Sow a small group, then another group later. This keeps the roots from all reaching harvest size on the same day. It also gives you a chance to adjust. If the first sowing produces leaves, but weak roots, move the next sowing into a brighter position or reduce the fertilizer. Do not judge the whole crop by one root. Pull a few at the expected harvest stage and compare them. A crowded section may produce smaller roots than a properly thinned section in the same pot. That comparison shows the effect of spacing more clearly than any general instruction. A real radish harvest is one of the best proof moments on a cloudy patio because you can see that the plant produced below the soil. Slice the roots into salads, add them to sandwiches, or pickle them. Tender leaves can also be used in some cooked dishes when they are clean and healthy. Radishes make you wait for a root. The next crop can be harvested at several stages, even when the base is still small. Green onions are among the most flexible crops for a patio kitchen garden. Green onions can be started from seed or young plants. They can grow closer together than large bulb onions because you are not waiting for each plant to form a wide bulb. A medium-depth container with good drainage is usually enough, and a rectangular planter can hold a neat row. The crop still benefits from bright light, but it can remain useful in conditions where a fruiting crop would disappoint. If growth slows, the leaves may stay thinner, yet you can still harvest them in small amounts. Avoid putting the planter in a dark corner where the leaves become pale and floppy. You have several harvest options. Cut a few green leaves and leave the base to continue growing. Pull the entire plant when you want the white portion, or harvest some plants early to thin the row, allowing the remaining ones more space. Do not repeatedly cut every leaf down to the soil if you expect fast regrowth. Leave enough green tissue for the plant to recover. Green onions fit into meals almost every day. Add them to eggs, soups, noodles, rice, salads, and baked potatoes. Because you often need only a small amount, even a modest planter can feel productive. Green onions give us mild flavor almost every day. The remaining crops are herbs and cool season greens that can make even a small harvest feel more useful in the kitchen. We begin with parsley. Parsley handles limited direct sun better than many fruiting plants, but it asks for patience at the beginning. The seeds can germinate slowly. A beginner may assume nothing is happening and sow a second layer of seeds, only to create a crowded pot later. Keep the surface evenly moist during germination and allow time for the seedlings to appear. Once established, parsley grows well in a container with adequate depth and drainage. It can often occupy a medium light zone after crops such as radishes and bok choy receive the brightest positions. However, if the stems become long and weak, move the pot closer to the light. Harvest parsley by removing the outer stems near the base. Do not simply trim the tips from every stem. Taking whole outer stems encourages new growth from the center and gives you cleaner bunches for the kitchen. Leave the younger central growth intact. Although parsley likes consistent moisture, do not keep the pot permanently saturated. During cool, cloudy weather, the root zone may stay damp much longer than expected. Check before watering and make sure the container does not sit in trapped water. Parsley can improve a meal even when the harvest is small. Chop it over potatoes, soup, pasta, salads, sauces, beans, or roasted vegetables. This is one reason herbs are valuable in a low-sun garden. A handful of leaves can change the flavor of an entire dish. Parsley rewards patience. Cilantro can grow much faster, but its productive window may close just as quickly. Cilantro is often happiest in cool conditions. When temperatures rise, it tends to bolt, which means the plant shifts from producing broad leaves to sending up a flower stalk. The leaves become smaller, the texture changes, and the flavor may become stronger. On a cloudy patio during a cool season, that tendency can slow, giving you a better leaf harvest. Succession sowing is useful. Plant a small amount, then sow another small amount later, instead of expecting one pot to remain perfect for months. This creates overlapping harvests. If the first group begins to flower, the next group may still be in its leafy stage. Harvest the outer stems before the plant becomes tall and feathery. You can remove a portion while leaving the center, but cilantro is not always as persistent after cutting as chives or parsley. Think of it as a crop that may need regular replacement. Give cilantro a bright position with good airflow. Low light can make the stems weak, while hot direct afternoon sun can stress the plant in warm climates. Morning sun with softer light later can be a useful balance. Cilantro brings strong value to tacos, salsa, rice, soups, beans, and many garnishes. If a plant bolts, you can allow it to flower and eventually produce coriander seed, but that is a different harvest goal. Decide whether you want leaves or seed, because the plant will not stay in the same stage forever. Cilantro is often treated as a short-season crop. The next herb can remain in the container much longer and return after repeated cutting. Chives are compact, familiar, and especially useful when patio space is tight. Chives grow as a clump of narrow leaves. They do not need the same container size as kale or chard, and they fit well near the edge of an herb area. They can tolerate limited direct sun reasonably well, though growth slows when total light becomes very low. Harvest by cutting a portion of the clump a few inches above the soil. Avoid cutting the entire plant to the ground every time. Leaving some leaves allows continued photosynthesis and helps the clump recover. As the plant becomes crowded, divide it into smaller sections and replant them in fresh mix. Good drainage remains important. A dense clump in a wet pot can develop problems near the base. Remove dead leaves, keep the crown clean, and check moisture before watering. Chives are valuable because a small amount is enough. Snip them over eggs, potatoes, soup, salads, or creamy dishes. The crop does not need to fill a basket to justify the space it occupies. Herbs also respond strongly to harvesting technique. With parsley and cilantro, remove usable stems cleanly instead of tearing the crown. With chives, use clean scissors so crushed leaf ends do not remain scattered through the clump. Harvest in the morning, after the leaves are dry, if that fits your schedule. Clean, dry foliage is easier to store and less likely to deteriorate immediately. Do not expect every herb to remain at peak production through every season. Parsley may slow in cold weather. Cilantro may bolt in heat. Chives may pause during the coldest period. The goal is not to force constant growth. The goal is to use each crop during the window when your patio naturally supports it. Chives may be familiar, but the final crop is one many gardeners overlook, even though cool temperatures and shorter days are exactly where it becomes interesting. Mâche, also called corn salad, forms small, tender rosettes and is well suited to cool season growing. Mâche prefers cooler conditions and may germinate poorly when the weather is too warm. This makes timing important. In a region with mild winters, it can be a useful cool season crop. In colder areas, it may need protection or a carefully chosen planting window. The plant stays low, so a wide, relatively shallow container can work as long as it drains well. Do not crowd the seedlings. The small rosettes need light and airflow, and leaves resting on wet soil can become dirty or damaged. You can harvest individual outer leaves, small rosettes, or entire plants depending on spacing and maturity. The flavor is mild and the texture is tender, which makes mâche excellent for salads and sandwiches. It also combines well with stronger greens such as arugula or mustard. Because the plant is low, do not place it behind the solid lower section of a railing. Raise the container until the leaves are exposed to the available sky. Check the soil carefully during cold or cloudy stretches because the pot may dry very slowly. Mâche completes the list, but the most important decision still remains. Where should each crop go when every part of the patio receives a different amount of light? Think of the patio as 3 light zones. The first zone is the brightest area. It may receive a few hours of direct sun, strong morning light, or the widest view of the sky. Reserve this zone for crops that need to build larger leaves, thicker stems, compact heads, or roots. Kale, Swiss chard, bok choy, mustard greens, and radishes belong near the top of that list. These crops are still more adaptable than many fruiting plants, but they need enough energy to create substantial growth. A radish must swell below the soil. Bok choy must build a firm base. Chard and kale must support large leaves. If you hide them in the darkest position, they may survive without giving the harvest you expected. The second zone receives medium light. It may be bright for much of the day, but get little direct sun. Spinach, arugula, tatsoi, mizuna, and cilantro can be tried here. Watch them rather than assuming the placement is correct. If stems stretch, leaves become small, or regrowth slows dramatically, move the pot closer to zone 1. The third zone receives softer light or sits slightly farther from direct sun. Leaf lettuce, green onions, parsley, chives, and mâche may be reasonable choices here, but zone 3 must still be bright. It is not a hidden corner under a solid roof with no view of the sky. If the crop becomes pale, weak, or permanently wet, the location is too dark. Height matters inside each zone. Place low crops where a railing or tall pot will not block them. Raise mâche, lettuce, or young spinach if necessary. Keep kale and chard behind shorter crops, but leave enough distance that their leaves do not create a canopy over everything in front. The zones may also move with the season. A spot that gets morning sun in September may lose it later. Be willing to rearrange the containers. Container gardening gives you that advantage. You can respond to changing light instead of accepting a fixed layout. Use the plants as feedback. Strong, compact growth suggests the placement is working. Long stems, a hard lean, slow regrowth, and persistently wet soil suggest a change is needed. Move one container at a time and observe the result. That teaches you more about your patio than any general rule. After placing the crops into zones, create a simple harvest rhythm. Walk through the patio 2 or 3 times each week with a small bowl and clean scissors. Remove damaged leaves first, then collect the oldest healthy leaves that are ready. This light harvest keeps you aware of pests, moisture, and plant shape. Bring the harvest directly into meals instead of waiting for a basket large enough for a photograph. A few lettuce leaves, several green onion tops, and a handful of parsley may not look dramatic, but together they can improve lunch. Small space gardening becomes rewarding when you measure usefulness, not only weight. You also do not need to grow all 15 crops at once. Starting with 3 is often the better strategy. For a salad patio, begin with leaf lettuce, arugula, and radishes. Lettuce gives you mild leaves, arugula adds flavor, and radishes provide a crisp root when the light is sufficient. This group also teaches you 3 different harvest styles. For a cooking garden, try kale, Swiss chard, and green onions. Kale and chard provide larger leaves for warm meals, while green onions add flavor in small amounts. Give kale and chard the brighter positions and keep the onions where they still receive good light without being shaded. For a compact, cool season garden, try tatsoi, parsley, and mâche. Tatsoi forms a low rosette. Parsley provides repeated outer stem harvests, and mâche adds tender salad leaves during suitable cool conditions. Watch those 3 crops for several weeks. Learn how quickly each container dries. Notice how the light moves across the patio. Observe which plant leans and which one remains compact. Then use that evidence to decide what to add next. A productive patio is not created by pretending you have more sunlight than you do. It is created by matching each crop to the light, space, temperature, and moisture you actually have. Your patio may never be the ideal place for a heavy tomato harvest, but it can still provide lettuce for lunch, spinach for eggs, kale for soup, radishes for a salad, green onions for noodles, and fresh herbs for everyday meals. Start with 1 salad green, 1 cooking green, and 1 herb. Give each crop the best position you can. Water according to the soil rather than the calendar, and harvest in a way that leaves the plant strong enough to continue. Then expand based on what truly performs in your space. Less sun does not have to mean no garden. It simply means the garden must be designed with more intention. Choose the right crops, protect the brightest places, and let the plants show you what your patio can become.